So welcome to part 2 of session 7, where we're going to be looking at techniques for managing resilience. So one technique we can use to manage challenging situations and our reactions to them are anchor phrases. And the purpose of these is to bring out our loving kindness even in challenging moments. And they help us to recall the capacity to be kind to oneself. And they encourage a gentle self-encouragement and empathy. So what we're going to be doing is choose a comforting phrase that we're going to be using during challenging moments. And we're going to prepare this phrase in advance. Now, to choose a comforting phrase to use during challenging moments, we're going to imagine feelings, a situation, a circumstance where we tend to become overwhelmed, maybe disheartened or disappointed, where there's stress, there's tension, or there's conflict which causes more stress for us. And what we're going to be doing is considering what words would be most helpful in this situation. And these words become anchors to remember that all things pass. So let's look at some examples of what these phrases might be. It's okay. One moment at a time. This won't last forever. This too will pass. Yes, this hurts. May I stay open? May I be kind to myself? Now these are just examples. You can take these or you can create ones of your own and write the rest words down for what you feel will be your own anchor phrase. And you may want to pause the video if necessary just to do that before we move on to the next part of this session. So we're going to be practicing some resilience meditations, and in order to explore this theme and to develop it, we're going to be using the acronym RAIN. And RAIN stands for recognize, that is, identify your emotions, acknowledge, to accept your emotions without judgment, to investigate, explore your emotions with curiosity, and non-identify, to understand that emotions are transient and they're not part of our identity. Now, the purpose of this technique is to invoke a certain sense of loving kindness in response to our emotions, and they provide a structured approach to emotional resilience. So let's look at this further. So recognize, acknowledge, investigate, non-identify. The first part, recognize, is something we've been doing throughout this course, which is identify your feelings, the sensations in your body, your thoughts, etc., and to name and locate them in the body. The second part is to accept what you're experiencing without judgment, to be mindfully aware of your full range of your human experience. And then we investigate. We meet your feelings with curiosity, with openness. Your focus is on understanding your response, not so much the external cause. And the final part, the non-identity, is to remind yourself once again that you are not your emotions. It's a shift from I am anxious to I feel anxious to there is anxiety here and now. It allows us to create a sense of distance which can feel open and freeing. Now each step could take you a fraction of a second, or in some cases it may take you days to work through, depending on the situation you're in. Now I'm going to engage in a practice in a moment to allow you to see the moment and the options more clearly and compassionately. And the questions to think about both during the practice and when you come to apply this in real-world situations is, which of these steps is the most challenging for you? What helps bring to mind the steps when feeling something so strong? And what is a typical self-talk heard when experiencing these strong emotions? And it's quite possible that what you find challenging will vary from circumstance to circumstance. So let's move on. Let's go and look at how we might practice this in a guided meditation. So this meditation is called Drawing Inner Strength, and we all possess inner strength within us, and we can learn to draw on it during challenging times. As with all our practices, this does need your full attention. So assuming you have that, just sit upright in your chair with your hips 2 to 3 inches above the level of your knees. Allow your feet to come flat on the floor. Rest your hands on your lap and don't interlock your fingers. You may close your eyes if you wish to, otherwise just have a soft downward gaze. And without changing it, become aware of your breath as it rolls in and rolls out again. In order to do this practice, what I'd like you to do is remember a challenging or overwhelming time in your past. And take a moment to reflect on what was helpful during that time. Were there any resources available? What comforted you? Were there any helpful individuals there? And become aware and acknowledge that the difficult period has passed and you are here now. And recognize the inner strength that helped you through this situation. Get a sense of how mindfulness practices and compassion could have supported you in the past. And take the opportunity to offer some compassion to what was missed. Now going forwards, you're going to combine inner strength with mindfulness, with loving kindness, with compassion, and self-empathy to face future challenges. Remember, there is a well of strength inside you. Acknowledge your inner strength and capacity for resilience. And let go of any situations you may have recalled. Allow this session to come to an end by becoming aware of your feet on the floor, the chair you're sitting in. Just wiggle your fingers and take 2 or 3 deep breaths. And open your eyes, if they were closed, and become aware of the environment you're in. And let's move on and reflect on anything you may have learned from this practice and what we've discussed so far. So get your journal ready and ask yourself what inner strength and resources from the past are helpful to you now. And what resources missing in the past can you now be incorporated into new and future inner strengths? So you may want to pause the video for a moment and do your journaling before we move on to look at resilience in a caretaking context. Now we're going to be exploring the idea of resilience for caretaking situations. Now many of us find ourselves in caretaking situations at work or with our family or friends and so on. Not necessarily as our job, but just because we're there and we're in that situation. So it's good to prepare for this kind of thing, and we may have noticed from the work we've been doing and from your experiences in the past that resilience does require balance, especially if we're in the situation of supporting other people. Now, we often associate resilience with dealing with our own situations, which is kind of what we've explored so far in this module. But we can also develop resilience when it comes to supporting other people. What we're aiming for is to balance the relationship, to balance an open heart, but keep boundaries and be aware of our limitations and the limitations of the people we're working with. And we're aiming to create a certain empathy without drifting into the empathetic distress, which we explored a little while ago. And this allows us to care without becoming overwhelmed by the situation and the circumstances and so on. So what we're going to be doing is to allow you to select a meaningful phrase for you so that it becomes kind of an anchor phrase for a caretaking situation. And I'm going to reveal on the slide in a moment about half a dozen of these. And what I'd like you to do is to select one of them and to make a note of it, because not only is this going to be beneficial for you going forwards, but we're also going to be using it in our next guided practice. So let's have a look at these phrases. May I offer care and presence without conditions or expectations. May I find the inner resources to be able to truly give. May I offer love, knowing I can't control the course of life, suffering, or death. I care about your pain, yet I cannot control it. I wish you happiness and peace, but cannot make choices for you. May I recognize my limitations compassionately, just as I recognize the limitations of others. So you may want to pause the video for a moment and have a look over these. It's quite possible you may have your own phrase, your own combination of these, or something entirely different, which you'd like to use going forwards, because we're going to be using that in our next guided practice, which is coming up in a few moments. So now we're going to be doing a guided practice on RAIN, the acronym we explored a few slides ago, for recognize, acknowledge, investigate, and non-identify. As with all our practices, this does need your full attention, so please make sure you have that. Sit upright in your chair with your knees 2 to 3 inches below the level of your hips. Your feet are flat on the floor. You can rest your hands in your lap, but don't interlock your fingers. Close your eyes if you wish to. Otherwise, just gaze softly down toward the floor. And without changing it, become aware. Become aware of your breath as it rolls in and rolls out again. And with your attention fully in your breath, your body, and your heart, call to mind a person in life who may be distressed or in a challenging situation. Take a moment to note the details of their situation. What's happening to them? Who is involved? What are the risks and consequences? What are the feelings around this? And are there any needs which are being expressed? And while you're doing this, be aware of any personal feelings or sensations that arise, and bring them to full recognition. Locate any sensations and emotions associated with this, naming them carefully. Allow curiosity about the emotions and sensations. Identify what they are and where exactly they are in your body. Now take the phrase which you selected a few moments ago, using the resilience for caretaking phrase from what we looked at in the previous slide, and repeat this phrase internally and silently. And repeat this phrase. And as you repeat this phrase, you may wish to add in any other helpful phrases which you have to hand. And as you repeat them silently, try to say them in rhythm with your breathing. Feel their meaning without trying to impose or to force anything on yourself. And just spend a few moments repeating the phrase or phrases, repeating them in rhythm to your breath. And I'll be silent for a few moments while you do that. And gently let the phrase go. Let go of any images or emotions associated with the situation you are exploring. So let it go completely as this practice draws to a close. You can become aware of your feet on the floor. Become aware of the chair that you're sitting in. Wiggle your fingers. And take 2 or 3 deep breaths. If your eyes were closed, then become aware of them closed, and open them, and aware of the environment you're in. And this brings to an end this practice, and let's move on and reflect on what we learned. So a reflection on the RAIN practice. What does it feel like to want something for another person? What does it feel like when another person wants something for us? You may want to pause the video here and reflect on these questions. Maybe you'd like to journal your experience of the RAIN practice and journal your experience of these questions. As we move into the closing notes for this session. So a reminder that there is a student workbook for these practices that you can look at in the coming week. In our next session, we're going to be looking at mindfulness in relation to anxiety. And as always, if you have any questions on this course, just use the contact form on the website and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So let's close. Let's close this session and wish all sentient beings and ourselves well. Well, thank you for joining me in this session. I hope you've learned a lot, and I look forward to joining you in the next session, where we'll be looking at mindfulness in the context of anxiety.